Bill 101.
Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good, ladies and gentlemen? We are back with another transmission. If you're new to this channel, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. In tonight's transmission, I'm going to be breaking down the methodology of eschatology, which is the science of the end times that's interconnected to the prophetic archetypes, which is also in alignment with the political apparatus and the celestial bodies when you're talking about the red moon, because the red moon was a representation of the bifurcation period that's interconnected to the Canaanite, which is the Albion European, the hybridization of the European, because the red moon was a reset moon. It's a resetting of the system. It's a recalibration of the system, which basically puts the cosmic pendulum, which brings everything back into its original order. So the red moon, it came out on 3/3 at 3:33 a.m. And then you have 303 days left in the year. So it's not a coincidence that numerical component in itself is basically in alignment with everything that's connected to the three-dimensional matrix of what I call the Metatronic overlay. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, put those rice bowls in the chat. You already know what time it is. We finna cook up the esoteric knowledge because we are back with another transmission. We finna cook it up. So let me get the screen share and everything going. We finna get right to the presentation. We got a lot of stuff to cover tonight because all this stuff is also in alignment with Dr. York's publication called El's Holy Injil, which is a transliteration of the Book of Revelation when you're talking about the fall of Babylon, right? Because the fall of Babylon in itself is interconnected to the red moon, right? Because the red moon in itself is also a representation of sacrifice. You're going to be you see a lot of sacrificial energy in this timeline. You're going to be seeing a lot of sacrificial energy. So this is why in the CBN News, they're talking about wars and rumors of wars in Iran, the three blood moons, and the signs of the times, because they know that the timeline that we're in is a part of the script of the scripture, right? Because like I said, one thing a lot of people don't understand about the book of Revelations, the book of Revelations was a book that was basically added. That book wasn't originally with the Bible. It was a book that was added because it's interconnected to the timeline that's taking place right now when you're talking about wars and you're talking about a ecological humanitarian crisis that's also interconnected to the depopulation agenda. Now, when you're talking about the locusts, right? When you see a swarming of locusts, that's also a representation of divine judgment and an invasion, right? In the New York Post, it says a 250 anchor swarm containing 80 million insects can consume what 35,000 people eat in a day, meaning their feast could quickly turn into a famine for humans, right? So the tourist hotspot beset by biblical plague of locusts in dramatic video. So now, when you're talking about Babylon, this is when you get into the esoterics of the Bible, because a lot of Christians, they don't understand the Bible intuitively because they don't read into the Bible with knowledge. They read into the Bible with their feelings, right? Because just like in the damn church, when he's like, "In God," see, that's inspirational ceremony. They're not really giving you any type of knowledge. That's inspirational ceremony. They want to make you feel good. They don't want to give you the edification that's really inside the damn Bible. So when you go to the timeline of the fall of Syria and Nineveh during the time of Jonah, Jonah chapter 3, verse 5, it says that Nineveh shall be overthrown because Assyria was interconnected to Nineveh, and Nineveh is also interconnected to the Babylonian Empire, because Nineveh, when you're talking about the 2023 and the 2024 in the 2017 solar eclipses, that put an ancient Hebrew owl symbol over the geographical landmass of America, which is basically the embodiment of judgment. So the solar eclipses of 2023 or 24, it went through 9 cities called Nineveh, right? And Nineveh is a nomenclature title for 9 because 9 is a representation of completion, the completion of the Babylonian Empire that was controlled by the Canaanites, right? So Assyria is also modern day America. Nineveh is modern day Washington and Jacksonville, Florida. So right before you're going to have a war on American soil, you're going to have a civil war, right? You got to understand that. And then you also got to understand that Assyria, hold on, let me go back. Assyria, which is a nomenclature title for Nineveh, which is America. Nineveh was the capital of a powerful ancient Assyrian empire located in modern day northern Iraq. But when you're talking about the cities that's in the Bible, you're really talking about the cities that's in the geographical landmass of America, because they talk about the gopher wood inside the Bible, but the only way you can find gopher wood is in America. So that's how you know that they're talking about America in the Bible. They're not talking about what's taking place in the Middle East, right? They're talking about this real holy land in real time. You got to understand that. So your preachers, your imams, your pastors, they're not going to give you that knowledge, right? They went to seminary school, they sold out. That's why I keep telling people you cannot give you can't put your trust inside these preachers inside these churches, because they sold their tongues for a tax exemption, right? They got a 501c3 contract, so they cannot speak against the government because they get their funding from the government. Now, when you're talking about Nineveh shall be overthrown, which is modern day Babylon, this is also acclimated to the 10 plagues, which is also the apocalypse of Abraham, right? When you're talking about conflagration, which is also the blueprint for the Great Purification period, when you're talking about the Red Star Kachina, because the cosmic fire is a form of nuclear explosion, which is also a destroyer in America. So it tells you about, it's basically giving you the blueprint for the seven thunders. But just like I said on African Spirituality podcast last night with Orisha Bemi, what I basically demonstrated was that the system cannot reverse the polarity until you wake up. The pole shift starts with you. The Phoenix event starts with you. So when you open up your 7 tablets of destiny, that's when you activate the 10 plagues, right? Everything starts with you, because everything that's connected to the outside world is really a microcosm of you, because you're really the microcosm. Psalms 82 verse 6, it says, ye are gods. If you're a god, that means that you have a lot more vitality and more intrinsic energy than anything that's connected to the Metatronic overlay, right? So that's what I'm basically saying. So you're going to have, this is basically giving a breakdown of the first thunder, second thunder, third thunder, and it's really talking about the 7 thunders, which is acclimated to the 7 tablets of destiny. That's what that actually, is talking about. So conflagration is the Great Purification, and the Great Purification is the Red Star Kachina, and the Red Star Kachina is cosmic fire by way of nuclear explosion, right? So the 9th punishment by way of the sword, in flight distress, the 10th thunder, and the voices and destructive earthquakes, right? That's talking about war in America. Everything that you see taking place right now is a prophetic timeline that's acclimated to the scripture. So when you look at the world ahead of 2026 of the Economist magazine, it's showing you the esoteric blueprint for what is to come in the future. Now, I need you to understand something. We got to analyze something. Anytime you see red balloons, right? I'm going to blow this up a little bit. No, because it kicked me out of this earlier, for some reason, but I'm going to just leave it like it is. When you look at a red balloon is nothing but it's a time clock with no numbers. A red balloon is a time clock with no numbers. So that's why you see so many red balloons. It's a timestamp. It's a timestamp, just like the red moon that we just had. It's a timestamp that's basically a representation of the fall of maritime law that's interconnected to the corporation, because now you have constitutional law, which is military law, that's acclimated to the land by way of tribal law, which is common law, which is for the people. So when you have the fall and the destruction, everything is where you see all this chaos and everything on the magazine. Now I need you to understand something here at the bottom. You see the soccer player right here, right? Then you got the FIFA, you got the cup, the World Cup coming up. right? You got Atlanta earns a top spot in the 2026 FIFA World Cup host city rankings, right? So, in my opinion, just based on on my independent research and my philosophy, I believe that something could possibly happen in some of these cities where they hosting the FIFA Cup. So you got the matches will also take place in other cities such as Los Angeles, Miami, Dallas, Houston, Kansas City. It's something that just went on in Kansas City today because there's a lot of sleeper cells in all these geographical areas, right? New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Seattle, Boston, right? And then you got Mexico City, and then you got Canada, Toronto, and Vancouver. I need you to understand something. They're putting it in your face in real time. So to look at the bottom right here, there's a soccer player, and then you got a red balloon right here. Because like I said, a red balloon is a clock with no numbers, and it could also be a representation of detonation, right? So pay very close attention to your surroundings during this time period, especially during the summer. And that's also the World Cup is also around the time of the 250th anniversary for America, for the United States Corporation. You gotta understand that. And then you got Bibi Netanyahu, and this looks like Kim Jong Un. Then you got Donald Trump right here. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. Then you got a guy right here holding a bomb. You know what I'm saying? So they're telling you in real time what's going to be taking place on this motherfucking magazine because the perception of art imitates reality. And they also show you the crumbling of the dollar, right? You see the dollar right here, the dematerialization of the dollar because you have the fall of maritime law. Now, this also demonstrates this is the St. Petersburg Cathedral in New York City. It shows you the destruction because I keep telling people Donald Trump is the 9/11 president. He's the 45th president, which is a 9, and he's also the 47th president, which is the 11. He's the 9/11 president, so a 9/11 event is going to be taking place on his watch, right? It's going to be taking place on his watch. He's the last president, according to Ingersoll Lockwood's book. The last president. So you got to look up this cathedral. It shows you the great majority of the destruction that's going to be taking place inside of New York City. Now, this, this is a rumor that's going out in a conspiracy theory conversations. It says evacuate from these cities: New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Houston, Nashville, New Orleans, Charlotte, San Francisco, Detroit, Seattle, Atlanta, Las Vegas, Baltimore, and Boston and Miami, right? Sleeper cells can be activated at any moment. And this just came out today. It says breaking: Iran warns the United States will no longer be safe. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a stark warning on March 2nd, 2026, declaring that the United States will no longer be safe anywhere in the world, not even in their own homes, right? This is all in alignment with the movie. Let me find it. Red Dawn, right? But before we get into that, because the red moon is actually the embodiment of the Red Dawn. You got to understand that. This is why they were showing you so many red balloons all throughout 2025. Remember they showed you the new Pennywise, the clown. They showed you all the red balloon symbolism. They showed you in Stranger Things, the red balloon symbolism. Like I said, a red balloon is a time clock with no numbers. You got to understand that. But it's also a representation of this motherfucking moon that took place last night, right? So it's not a coincidence that this moon has all these numerical alignments. Now I'm going to show you a video here. So get back to this. Show you this video before we get into it.
Night owls are in for a treat with a blood moon to grace the sky tonight. Stargazers in every state can watch the moon turn a deep red colour for nearly an hour, starting around 10 p.m.
The significance of that red-orange hue is why it's sometimes...
And I need you to understand something. There is no reason to be motherfucking scared during this time period. Just be prepared. Get your household in order, right? Get your household in order. You know what I'm saying? That means that you and your woman got to be in alignment. You think for her as she feels for you. Y'all got to become one, right? Get your household in order so there's no reason to be scared. Because if you get your household in order, that's when you get a community in order. And when you get a community in order, that's when you get a whole civilization in order, right? Because I keep telling people about this book, the Green Book. It tells you the fall of democracy, which is happening in real time. And it tells you how to go through the blueprint for the reconstruction process once you have the fall of the three-dimensional apparatus in Western civilization in totality. So you got to read this book right here. Salute to my OG, my elder Rod Hayes. He's the one that put me onto this book. So I'm going to keep playing this video. So there's no reason to be scared. But you know what I'm saying? You was incarnated back during this timeline for a reason. So there's no reason to be scared during this timeline.
Night owls are in for a treat with a blood moon to grace the sky tonight. Stargazers in every state can watch the moon turn a deep red colour for nearly an hour, starting around 10 p.m.
The significance of that red-orange hue is why it's sometimes called a blood moon. I also sat down with Stuart Brackney, president of the Phoenix Astronomical Society. He gave me an interesting take on the meaning of the lunar eclipse.
Wars have been started and stopped because of this event. Marriages have taken place and stopped because of this event. And sacrifices have been made because of this event.
You hear what he said? They're telling you in real time, sacrifices have been made, right? It's kind of like the same thing that took place in the movie Cabin in the Woods. You had 5 archetypes that needed to be sacrificed to where the puppeteers who lived underground to have some type of dominion on the planet. They had to sacrifice these people. And the same is another movie that's in alignment. It's like 2 different Cabin in the Woods. They needed to sacrifice to maintain survival on this planet. Because this is why they build in all their damn bunkers. They build all the bunkers because they can't escape the firmament. You got to have the brain and central nervous system melanin to escape the calamity on this planet, and they don't have it. Why would you build bunkers? They build bunkers because they can't escape. They don't have the genetic format to lead the chaos and the destruction that's coming to the planet. When you're talking about the red and the blue star Kachina that's interconnected to the Hopi prophecy.
Because they think in the past it was a message from above.
Putting all of this together, there will be certainly a new Iran and a new Middle East that is on the back end of this fighting, but no one seems to have, and I don't think anyone can have any idea what that will actually look like, because we're in a moment of just profound uncertainty as to what comes next.
And despite the efforts by top negotiators that were sent to Oman and to Switzerland, whether it be Special Envoy Steve Witkoff or President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, who we know have been working across the region around the clock over the past year, not just on this issue, but also to get a ceasefire in Gaza and implement the new Board of Peace to create stability in the region. The understanding was that the Iranian regime and the supreme leader himself, these were the last hurdles for the region between stability and instability.
All right, if you're waking up very early tomorrow morning, keep your eyes to the sky for the chance to catch a total lunar eclipse. It all starts around 3:44 Tuesday morning. The eclipse will begin slowly as the moon enters Earth's outer shadow. While the initial dimming is faint, the event becomes unmistakable as the moon slides deeper into the planet's central shadow. So poetic. The phenomenon is popularly known as a blood moon, as a red hue surrounds the moon. For more information, by the way,
A showcase of our universe, letting us know a lot is happening out in space.
President Trump held the first meeting of his Board of Peace this morning, following the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. It comes as CBS News has learned he's weighing new military action against Iran as soon as this weekend. But no decisions have been made. Natalie Brand has more details from the White House.
Sources tell CBS News Iran was discussed in the White House Situation Room on Wednesday. The conversations are described as fluid and ongoing. This morning, President Trump is promoting his focus on peace and deal making.
I think we have to smile. A lot of good things.
President Trump convened an inaugural Board of Peace meeting in Washington, D.C. Thursday morning with at least 24 countries represented.
Anytime they're telling you about peace, peace this, peace that, That's how you know destruction is coming. That's how you know. For the Christians in the back, they've been telling you all throughout that methodology in the Bible that anytime you're talking about peace, destruction is going to be coming. Pay attention.
The biggest thing of all, we have peace in the Middle East right now.
The president also announced that member states have pledged more than $7 billion for humanitarian aid and reconstruction in Gaza.
When you set aside weapons and killing and destruction and invest in your people and invest in prosperity, it can create great things.
The meeting comes as President Trump weighs action against Iran. Sources tell CBS News top national security officials have told the president the military is ready for potential strikes as soon as this weekend.
They cannot continue to threaten the stability of the entire region.
But sources say the timeline is likely to extend beyond the weekend and that President Trump has not yet made a final decision.
They must make a deal, or if that doesn't happen, I maybe can understand. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But bad things will happen if it doesn't.
As part of a massive military buildup, a second aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, is on its way to the Middle East. All U.S. forces deployed to the region are expected to be in place by mid-March.
Over on Capitol Hill, some lawmakers are sounding the alarm, saying President Trump cannot move forward without consulting Congress. Democratic Congressmember Ro Khanna says he and Republican Thomas Massie have a war powers resolution and will try to use a discharge petition to force a vote.
We begin this hour, though, with the latest developments in the Middle East as America and Israel wage war on Iran. Let's go live to Mimi Becker in Tel Aviv. Mimi, good morning.
Good morning, David. This conflict is spreading and spreading quickly, with Lebanon now being hit by Israel as Israel and Hezbollah exchange blows. The city of Beirut, multiple strikes have been seen there, with Lebanon officials now saying that more than 50 people have been killed. Israel is also continuing to strike Iran, with Tehran hit multiple times today, but Iran is still fighting back. In the city of Beersheba here, about an hour and a half south of Tel Aviv, a missile hit just 100 meters.
Remember in the last transmission, I was telling y'all about the Tel Aviv district is the central district, and the central district is where you have Israeli Mossad intelligence. That's when I was showing you in real time that they're watching a lot of us. They're searching our names, right? But that place, that so-called district just got bombed.
From an apartment block, several people were injured there, but luckily no one was killed. And we've also seen today that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has visited the site of a strike that hit yesterday that killed 9 people. That was a school, a synagogue, and a bomb shelter struck.
The world is changing very fast right in front of us. The old world is gone, frankly, the world I grew up in, and we live in a new era in geopolitics, and it's going to require all of us to sort of re-examine what that looks like and what our role is going to be. And we've had many of these conversations in private with many of our allies. We are our allies. And we need to continue to have those conversations. And I think Saturday, hopefully, and the meetings we'll have there, when we'll.
So if you wanted to see it in totality, what would be the best way to go about doing that? And as far as time and
okay. Yeah, well, here's the fun thing about this, Greg. Just remember the number 3. It's the third month, the third day at 3 o'clock at 33 minutes. Okay, so that is an amazing lineup. So all you have to do is remember 3. Third month, third day, third hour, 33 minutes. AM is the maximum of the totality, and it's about 33 degrees about the southwest.
See, they know that their time is up. They know their time is up. They can feel it. This is why when it comes to the news media, they want to turn everything into a joke. Y'all know y'all time is up, right? Because the North Star is bringing all these neutrinos that's reversing the polarity of the illusion that was cultivated by the Metatronic overlay, which controls the 3-dimensional illusion, right? Which is cultivated by people, places, and possessions. The illusion is starting to fall. The house of cards is starting to fall. Don't nobody give a fuck about religion no more, right? People are stepping away from the religion. People are stepping away from politics, right? Because you got a lot of these people, they into a lot of this hedonistic activity. We starting to see it in real time. Because like I said, conspiracy theorists, we wasn't crazy We was just early. We were just early about everything, and now everything's coming to the forefront.
Horizon. It might be a good day to play the lottery. I don't know what it is, but I've never seen anything like this where the numbers all line up, except for the year, but not a bad and easy way to remember the time and date. Now, most people need to remember that it's happening on the night of March 2nd. It's in the morning of March 3rd. Some people will go out on the night of the March 3rd thinking the eclipse is going to happen. It's already happened. You missed it. Okay, so that's what's happening. So you want to be someplace where you have a.
So this is what I'm saying. If they can tell you all this in the news media, why ain't your pastor, why Pastor Porkchop is not telling you about these anomalies that's happening, you know, in the atmosphere? Why ain't he telling you? Why? Because he traded his tongue in for a tax exemption. Or he just ignorant. You know what I'm saying? A lot of those pastors, they just ignorant about everything.
Good view of the southwest horizon, and you'll be able to see the full moon. It's easy. Even if it is mostly cloudy or partly cloudy forecast, you can always see the moon kind of break through a little bit. We've had that numerous times, especially here in Oregon. In the valley, okay, we might get some fog and clouds, but it's still worth a shot. You might get a better chance in Central Oregon, but be out there about 3 o'clock. You don't need any special equipment. Just go in your backyard as long as you have a southwest view. Just look up, you'll see the full moon. Binoculars are great. And then for an hour, you'll see the totality at 3:33. And then it's all over at 4. I know a lot of people have to go to work on Tuesday, so it might be kind of hard to do that during that fashion.
But if you can get up, would you say that it's worth it to get up and see something like this?
Yes, it is. And, you know, we won't have another totality for 4 years. Okay, totality that is. But we'll have some partials along the way. But it's still definitely worth it. It's fun. It's beautiful, safe, easy, and it's an opportunity to see what the lunar eclipse is about, how fun it is, and so on.
All right. Well, you've convinced me. Well, that's amazing. Anything else that you think is really important for people to know?
Well, we are not doing any stargazing party on the Rose City Astronomers. And this is something that's very easy, comfortable. You don't have any fancy equipment. Just look up and enjoy the view of the lunar eclipse. And then the next one you'll be ready for will happen in August 28th, which will be a partial eclipse. And it'll just be just a moonrise. You'll start seeing partial of it. So you have 2 opportunities this year.
Fantastic. Jim, thank you as always for walking through all of this and explaining this to everybody. And that's crazy with the number 3.
It is, and I have never had anything like this before, and it's like, wow, that's an easy one to remember. Just remember the number 3, and you could just memorize it.
Now, the number 3 is also a Trinity principle, which is also a representation of the fall of the 3 city-states, right? So it's also a representation of the trifecta that controls Babylon. That's also that, you know, it represents that as well. And it also represents the process that we're basically in when you're talking about the tribulation period. Because when you look at the prefix of the word tribulation, you get tri. Tri means 3, right? So when you're talking about a tribulation period, it's talking about going from 2027 all the way up to 2030. But the beginning of the symbolism of the 7-year tribulation started from 2020 to 2027. Then the after effects of it, the 3 years, is from 2027 to 2030, because according to the prophecy of popes, the 2027 is the fall, is the end of the world, basically, because it's the fall of the Vatican Church. Because all the religions, they operate on what? The Sabbath. They operate on the energy of the moon. It's a lunar doctrine, right? So when you're talking about moonfall, you're talking about the fall of the church, the collapse of the Canaanite system in totality.
It's okay. I'll be out there at 3:33. That's easy.
It's easy, and that's about.
And also, you know, get the likes up, man. So we can push this video in the algorithm, because, you know, when it comes to videos like this, and you have a lot of, you know, pragmatic information, they try to shadow ban the information. So we want to, get these transmissions out there as much as possible, especially, people that's connected to my generation, what I'm saying, the younger generation. We want to get this edification to everybody that's in my bracket as well. And, what I'm saying, those who are also younger than me. So that's, what I'm saying, you got to get the edification to the young, because that's how you reverse everything that's interconnected to their system. So we're going to get back to the transmission. Okay. All right. So it's showing you everything in real time. And then it tells you that Iran warns United States, already went through this part of the transmission. And now this is where we get into ecclesiastical chapter 38 and 39. When you're talking about Gog and Magog, North Korea says attacks on Iran are a violation of national sovereignty. So this is also acclimated to Executive Order 13818 and 13848. It's a human rights violation, right? Putin says the killing of Iran's supreme leader is a cynical murder that violates all standards of human mortality and international law. Now, Russia, China will breach America's borders and destroy DC's obelisk, right? Because the obelisk in itself is basically a representation of the watermark of maritime law. That's what the obelisk is. It's the watermark for maritime law. But the obelisk in itself, that came from us, but they basically inverted the obelisk with draconian magic. So it says right here, and they shall destroy the walls of Tyus, which is the District of Columbia. So this is all the cities that they're talking about in the Bible. They're talking about inside, the United States of America. That's what they're talking about. So this is basically the representation of the invasion. Putin, who is basically the blueprint for Nebuchadnezzar, will invade and slaughter America. Just like in the movie Red Dawn, like I was saying. And then when you go to the Keys of Enoch, it tells you right here, it says, will be free from the consciousness image of the bear. The bear is a representation of who? Russia, which emanates thought forms of war and destruction. Now, then when you go here, it talks about in Jeremiah the sound of the trumpet, because trump is actually the personification of the trumpet, the sound of the weeping and the burials, according to Jeremiah 4:8. The coming of the destroyer, Gog of nations, Northern Europe, which is China and Russia, the Gomer, the Gentiles, the Albion European. That's what that is basically demonstrating in real time. So it's basically showing you the president of America, the end of America's wickedness, and show mercy. So they're showing you in real time, you got the Red Dawn. So in this movie, you got the older version, and then you got the newer version. In the older version, it shows you the invasion of the Russians. In the newer version, it shows you the invasion of the Koreans. It's either the Chinese or the Koreans, but it's really showing you the symbolism that's in between North Korea and Russia, who is also strategic allies with Iran. And then you got Russian spy sleeper cells are everywhere. So the FBI's Operation Ghost Stories busted a large Russian sleeper cell inside the United States. The CIA has a sleeper agents who infiltrate into unfriendly countries and go to sleep, sometimes for years before being activated. So this is why I keep telling people, a lot of these sleeper cells, a lot of them that's controlling these gas stations, a lot of them that's inside these where you get your nails done and shit, a lot of them are just waiting on that motherfucking phone call. They waiting on that phone call in real time for them to strap up, right? The whole time you think they, working class citizens, but they get funding from the government. Why you think the government gives all these foreigners all these, incentives, just to live here, get gas stations and things of that nature? Something to think about. So this is how just pay attention to your local gas stations and how they be acting. And then he said he does not communicate with his or her sponsor or with existing agents or with the United States embassies or staff. They remain invisible. Then you got this going on. You got a suspect in Texas shooting identified as 53-year-old, I don't know, whatever that name is. He's from Senegal. But when you look at his shirt, it says the property of Allah. Now, this was a psychological operation that was implemented by the CIA because they want to give off the fallacy and the illusionary perception that it's Black Americans or indigenous MERS in America who was actually propagating this. This is why, like I said, this was a psychological operation. So that's why I keep telling people, you got to study Henry Kissinger's National Memorandum 200. He was the Secretary of State of 1975. And he said, now, he also said that, Black life and human life on a planet is at unstable heights. So this is all a part of the eugenic systems when you're talking about Project Pogo and Project Zypher, right? It's an unaliving program to target so-called Black people. Now, one thing you gotta understand, Iran, they already, dished out bombs to many different cities. They sent out missiles, right? So they got money to go to war. Why? Because the deep state shadow government that's interconnected to Obama gave $1.7 billion to Iran for militarized weapons, right? The deep state shadow government is actually funding this war in real time. So this is why you got to read between the lines. When you go to the White House documentation right here on their website, it says Iran's nuclear facilities have been obliterated and suggests otherwise in fake news. Now, this came out in June of 2025, but Donald Trump just lied. He said in real time, he said the reason we're going over there because they have weapons of mass destruction and they have nuclear weapons and things of that nature. But you just said this last summer. You said that, the weapons of mass destructions and everything was obliterated. But so why are you going over there? Because it's all a part of the plan. He just lied in real time. And then you got Iran's top general warns Trump, we launched our older missiles, soon will reveal weapons unlike anything you've ever seen. You've never seen. You've ever seen before. So, as I was telling you guys, Executive Order 13818, Executive Order 13848. So Donald Trump, he's in violation of the Uniform Commercial Code of Military Justice. So this is basically a human rights violation that he committed by going to war and lying about saying that they got nuclear bombs and things of that nature and that they was destroyed in real time. And then you got this going on. It says that so they're killing off the great majority of their leaders. So what makes you think they're not going to spin the block? They're going to spin the block. You know what I'm saying? In January 3rd of 2020, the Trump administration unalived Qasem Soleimani, and that was the beginning points of the 7-year tribulation period in 2020, right? And then you just killed off their leader, Ayatollah Arif, and then they killed off another leader, right? So in everything that you see taking place in real time, so this is why they implemented the jihad militarized operation. So this is the documentation of it. This just came out today. I don't know how to read Arabic or whatever, but it's showing you that this is basically a jihad operation that they're showing you in real time. So that means that they're going to start invading America. Now, this is also esoterically interconnected to the Third World War, according to Albert Pike, when you read his book, Mores and Dogma. So it says the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by agent terror of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. That's what you see and taking place in real time. You cannot make this up. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and the political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations once more divided on this issue. So this is all a part of the extermination program, right? When you're talking about, the depopulation agenda, that is also was acclimated to the Georgia Guidestones when they said that they want to maintain humanity at 500 million. So we'll exterminate those destroyers of civilization and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, and then it goes down here, receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, right? Which is basically the embodiment of the false light. And the false light is the false golden age that's cultivated by artificial intelligence that keep you interconnected to the smart grid. Because according to Dr. York, the year 2043, that's when you're going to have the firmament break open, right? Because the firmament in itself is a representation of the spiritual cutoff. So this is why they want to trap the energy here with, with a synthetic energy system. When you're talking about the grid, the synthetic energy grid system that is controlled by artificial intelligence, which is a form of technocratic sorcery. Now, I told you, everything they do is interconnected to numerical forms of Freemasonry. The United States, Israel launched a joint attack on Iran after 47 years. He's the 47th president, right? Now, the 47 is also a degree in Freemasonry that's interconnected to the 47th problem of Euclid. The 47th problem of Euclid is actually a Pythagorean mathematical problem, and it's a representation of man, woman, and child. Isis, Osiris, Horus. So that's what that's basically demonstrated, because that philosophy in itself means that it's the restoration of the matriarch in real time by way of the cultivation of the sun cycle. So they're telling you what time it is in the form of numerical components, in the form of symbolism, in the form of Freemasonic sigilcism as well. Now, you got to watch this movie right here. I talked about this in the reel that I demonstrated the other day. On November 6th, it talks about where this movie came out. It's called The Siege. It's got Denzel Washington in it. It's talking about Islamic militarized groups infiltrating America and bombing buildings all throughout New York City. So you got to watch this movie right here. And you all, like I said, the perception of art imitates reality. The CIA has an office in Hollywood, and Hollywood has an office in the CIA. There's a reason why in the movie Leave the World Behind, they showed you this paper. This red paper has Islamic writing on it. And then, according to the writing, the translation of it, it says, "Death to America." That's what that basically was representing. And then on the front of the paper, when you turn it around, it had the snake, because the snake was also the beginning process when you had the shedding of a system before you step inside of the great purification period that leads you to the great separation in 2027. Because the year 2027 in itself is an 11. So that's the separation of ideology and the separation of the chosen ones that's tapped into their authenticity. So you're going to have NPCs versus the chosen ones during this time period, right? It's going to be a lot of people that's going to be stepping away from religion, but it's also going to be a form of it's going to be a religious war that's going to be taking place on the geographical landmass of America as well. So that's my philosophy when you're talking about the Civil War. So also in the Leave the World Behind, that was executively produced by Obama, is also a representation of the EMP attack. It speaks of the EMP attack. An EMP is a electromagnetic pulse deficiency that collapses the energy grid. So where you have a communications blackout, misinformation, and total societal collapse. Now I'm gonna show you another video for a second. Put the rice bowls in the chat. Get the likes up so we can push the video in the algorithm. Y'all know I don't ask nobody for nothing, so at least you can get the likes up.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Yo! No way! No way! No way!
And pretty soon, that same demonstration is going to be taking place on American soil. So you got to be prepared for it. So like I said, this is not the time to get scared. Get your money up, get your health up, get your finances up, get your household in order, get your tribe together, and come up, you know what I'm saying, with some intrinsic resources. Galvanize your tribe in this time period right now. Because, you know what I'm saying, it's only a matter of time before they hit that motherfucking reset button. It's only a matter of time.
Opa, Suhad.
Oh my God!
The United States has requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose. We have taken the decision to accept this request to prevent Iran firing missiles across the region, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk, and hitting countries that have not been involved.
And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case.
Like I said, just because the great majority of their leaders are, you know, being killed off in Iran, don't think they won't spend the block, because I told you, Obama gave $1.7 billion to Iran. He basically funded their militarized weaponry, the deep state shadow government. The deep state shadow government, the same faction who funds the cartel to bring in drugs in America. The same faction who funds, you know, organizations like child services so they can harvest the energy of children. The same demonstrative government that gave a lot of resources to the Vatican, because the Vatican in itself, they gave $3 billion to the cartel to pump drugs into America, right? So you got to understand something. The deep state shadow government is a personification of false light. The false light that is cultivated by fraud. So this is why I said, everything that's interconnected to their corporate system, it has to fall. It has to fall in real time. So when you see the collapse of money, you see the collapse of all these organizations that's connected to human trafficking. This is why the war is going on, right? It's deflection. They want you to forget about the Epstein files so bad. They want you to forget about that because they don't want you to understand. They don't want people to tap into the fact that, oh shit, the people that we've been listening to, they some perverts. They some hedonistic motherfuckers. They, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't need to be listening to them. They into some weird stuff. They don't want you to come to that realization. So this is why they got to hit you with bread and circus, distractions, war, right?
For almost 50 years, these wicked extremists have been attacking the United States while chanting the slogan, "Death to America," or "Death to Israel," or both. They
see, just like they said in the movie Leave the World Behind. Leave the World Behind was not a movie. It was a documentary for what is to come. They show you the collapse of the energetic grid system, where all technological devices was basically collapsed, where you have a total societal collapse and a communications blackout. It's showing you that in real time because it's going to happen. It has to happen. It has to. And I want it to happen. You know what I'm saying? A lot of us, you know what I'm saying, that's connected to our dark side, we've been wanting, you know what I'm saying, this world to end for a long time. You know what I'm saying? So I'm ready for it. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion, I think, you know, it's going to be fun. You know what I'm saying? I'm just, you know, weird like that, I guess. But
are the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. We are the world's greatest and most powerful nation, so we can do something about what they do. These intolerable threats will not continue any longer.
Oh my God. Whoa! Oh my God! Yo! No way! No way! No way! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh, holy! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Yo! Oh my God! Oh my God! That's retarded! It actually hit right here! Oh my God!
I think when you look at what the Iranians were doing as far as their enrichment activities, they'd taken it well beyond what they claimed was for civilian and peaceful uses. They were close to getting it weaponized. And at that point, they are very dangerous because while they could have created a nuclear weapon, you also have to look at that gives them the opportunity to create a dirty bomb as well. So either way, they had to be stopped and they were unwilling to negotiate, which meant you had a clear and present danger not only for the region, but the world as well.
The President Trump, says he offered them free uranium for a civilian nuclear program, which is what they contended that they were enriching uranium for. They turned him down on that. Doesn't that suggest that they wanted their uranium for military purposes?
Absolutely, yes. When you look at it, both the United States and at one time Russia said, we will help you develop a civilian nuclear program. And in every case, the Iranian regime turned those offers down and chose to continue with their enrichment activities, getting better centrifuges, more high-powered centrifuges, and some that were specifically designed to create weapons-grade material. So they were clearly interested in producing a bomb and not a peaceful reactor that would provide electricity.
You have said that the actions by Israel and the U.S. are long overdue here. What do you mean by that?
When you look at it, I go back to my very first deployment. I was in the embassy in Beirut in early April of 1983 when they blew the face off and killed 17 Americans. That was attributed to Hezbollah. I lost a Naval Academy classmate in the Beirut barracks bombing. Iran has been killing Americans for decades, and essentially we've had administration after administration fail to address the threat that they represented, and it continued to metastasize and grow throughout the Middle East and the world. President Trump today has taken the decisive steps necessary to eliminate not only the threat from the regime, but create the conditions for the Iranian people to step up and take over their government and once again have a peaceful Middle East.
Moments ago, President Trump posted a new video on Truth Social delivering an update on Operation Epic Fury. Let's listen in.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved. We have very strong objectives. They could have done something 2 weeks ago, but they just couldn't get there. Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, even as we continue the righteous mission for which they gave their lives. We pray for the full recovery of the wounded and send our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case. But America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most punishing blow to the terrorists who have waged war against basically civilization. They have waged war against civilization itself. Our resolve, and likewise that of Israel, has never been stronger. America is now, again, the richest, most powerful nation in the world by far. But the only reason we enjoy the quality of life that we do and the freedom.
Bro, all they do is lie. He's saying nothing but lies.
And security is we have done things that others are unable to do. But it's because of warriors who are willing to lay down their lives to do battle with our enemies. And they do battle better than anybody. An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be a dire threat to every American. We cannot allow a nation that raises terrorist armies to possess such weapons, would allow them to extort the world to their evil will. Not going to let it happen.
Exactly. Send your sons, send your kids to war. So we're going to get back to the transmission. Put the rice bowls in the chat, ladies and gentlemen, because we cooking them up. We showing how they line in real time about everything. All right, we're going to get back to the transmission. Okay. All right. First, let me remove this. All right. Back to this. Now, like I said, all this is nothing but a deflection. You know, as missiles dominate headlines, people say the world is being manipulated to stop looking at the Epstein files. I believe that, right? Because when you get deeper into the esoterics of the Epstein files, you know, this is when you're talking about reptilians and things of that nature. So Epstein survivor Juliette Bryant claims Epstein turned into a lizard reptile. And they also talk about at the Bohemian Grove, when they seen one of the Rothschilds, he shapeshifted into a draconian reptilian as well. So, you know, there's a lot of, you know, conspiracy behind it, but who knows? You can't leave nothing off the table. And then you got a major update. President of Ghana just announced that there's a $100 million bounty on the life of Donald Trump. So now this is where we get into the esoterics of biblical context. So when the money of the corporation of the United States, corporation of evil and wickedness, robbers and fails. So the money system is going to fail, because one thing you got to understand about Amity law. Amity law is commerce law, and commerce law is nothing but water law. That's also interconnected to canon laws, which is also the blueprint for ecclesiastical law. But the only way to combat that energy is the law of the land, which is common law, which is military law and constitutional law. So this is why I keep telling people the law of the land is actually, you know, a representation of the matriarch, which is the Queen Mother, right? There's a reason why, just like me and Rod Hayes demonstrated the other night, when you see the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, he is holding a black woman. He's pulling her out of the water and back onto the land, because the land in itself is a representation of Turtle Island. So the water law in itself is basically connected to the fallacy of the corporation, which created the demonstrative government. So this is how you reverse the political divine law of God and the Lord, right, in real time, to where you cultivate property, title, equity, deeds, because anything that's connected to water law, air law, ecclesiastical law, which is connected to amity law, that's nothing but a demonstrative government. That's nothing but the embodiment of fraud, right? You got to understand that. So this is why, you know, in Genesis, it talks about the right hand, which is a representation of the political apparatus. And then you got the left hand is a representation of the social apparatus. Now, This is why I was saying, Donald Trump, he was saying that all the economy's doing really well, but Bitcoin, and BlackRock and everything, they just liquidated all their assets today, right? Because of everything that's taking place in real time. So that's why they showed you on the Economist magazine the crumbling of the dollar. If the dollar is declining, how's your economy doing well? Right? Because, war in itself is what's going to bring up the prices. It's going to cause more inflation. So, like I said, all they do is lie. Lie, lie, lie. Let me get back to the... So now, when you're talking about the sons of Benelli, which is the Canaanite, which is also interconnected to the fish, which is the Piscean age of darkness of the sea that's interconnected to the European Union, who was the first introduced to the system of money to Adam. So when you go to the silver portion, the elderless son of Benelli, who was a Canaanite, who first introduced gold and silver among us and deceived his and other brothers and sisters. And as ye have these developed a system of money. So the sons of Benelli created a fake corporation, the Canaanite. So the Washington, D.C. merchants of politicians and traffickers, right? When we were talking about the Epstein files, because Canaan's admiralty law, which is maritime law, commerce law, which is basically interconnected to the merchants, which is controlled by politicians and banksters, right? Who are basically the sellers of nations, the sellers of resources, the sellers of the so-called black people, and the sellers of war. So this is what you're seeing in real time. When you go to Ezekiel 27:8, is basically showing you the merchant of cities of Canaan, Zidon, NYC for the banking and usury, and Tyre, which is DC for the governing, which is also interconnected to the 3 city states like I was demonstrating earlier. And then you got the warning of fire in America, which is also a representation of conflagration. So that's the fall of organized religion. It's the fall of big corporate finance and economics. It's the fall of the social infrastructure and miseducation. And it's the fall of the unjust political and laws and military complex, processed foods and pharmaceutical companies. Everything that's connected to the corporation has to go through the great dreadful day, which is the great purification period. That is what you're talking about in the Bible of what they talk about of conflagration. That's what that's basically demonstrating in real time. So it's basically the return of the Red Star Kachina. So for the 3 evils of wickedness, the 3 evils, wickedness, in the 4 years to repent, the 7-year Passover, which is basically esoterically meaning the 7-year tribulation, Thoth will judge and punish Washington, D.C. Now, this intrinsic energy of Thoth is basically the blueprint for the conjunction of Gemini and Uranus, right? Because Gemini is interconnected to Thoth, and Thoth is also equated to the heart chakra, and the heart is esoterically connected to the tongue. So the more you speak truth to power, the more you will punish everything that's connected to the corporation, such as Washington, D.C., and Assyria and Nineveh, which is basically modern day Babylon. So now this is where we get into this. And then once we get through the transmission, we're going to do some Q&A. So it tells you right here in recent studies by MIT revealed after 4 months of frequent use of ChatGPT, users had 47% drop in neural connectivity and a marked inability to recall content they had just generated. So this is what you see taking place in real time, right? Because all forms of technological devices, all forms of artificial intelligence is basically the blueprint for DARPA. DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency that also controls the great majority of everything that's connected to the World Wide Web. So that also talks about the World Wide Web and the Hopi prophecy, because the web in itself is the net of Indra. The net of Indra is a representation of the draconian reptilian net that is controlled by the archonic forces. So the Arconic forces, they need the DARPA projects, they need internet, they need AI, they need the metaverse, they need Neuralink to mimic the energy of the neuromelanin, which is the brain and central nervous system melanin. They have to mimic that energy. Why? Because that's when you get into the inception of time. That's when Atlantis fell, because they started to reverse the polarity of the crystal technology and use it for, you know, modern day purposes. So what you're seeing in real time, I keep telling people, think for yourself why it's still legal to, because this is why it's imperative for you to read and write. Because if you have the ability to write, you have the ability to think. So this is why it's imperative to people to understand. Stay tapped into your authenticity as much as possible. Because if you can't read, you can't think. And if you can't think, they're gonna put a system in play to do the thinking for you, right? And that's gonna basically, you know, transmute your energy to you becoming a, you know, an NPC basically. This is why in my book, The Sacred Book of the Chosen, I talk about the NPCs versus the chosen ones, right? In chapter 7. Because, you know what I'm saying, the Christ energy is basically the representation of the mind. You have to be tapped in, mind, body, and soul, which is the true Israel. You got to be tapped in. You got to use artificial intelligence as a tool. You can't use it, you know, as your end all be all for information. So like I said, if you don't have the ability to write, you don't have the ability to think. If you don't have the ability to think, they're going to put a system in play to do the thinking for you. And once that happens, you're basically going to be, you know, disconnected from the energetic frequency of the soul. You're going to be tapped out. You're not going to be tapped in. So this is why it's imperative to understand that when you get into the Gnostic text, it talks about the archons of the demiurge, because the main purpose of this war that's taking place, the beginning points of it, the main purpose of it is to unalive an amalgamation of people to where they maintain humanity at 500 million under a smart city grid system. They want to maintain humanity under basically technocratic sorcery, to where the archons have the ability to siphon your energy. So according to the Gnostic text, the archons are the demiurge. The Gnostic text demonstrates that the archons are parasitical entities who feed on human energy by keeping us trapped in a false construct, artificial intelligence, technology. They use distraction, control systems, artificial realities to keep souls from awakening, right? Because that's what the Draconian reptilian net is. When you get inside geomancy, the net of Indria, the World Wide Web, they want to keep you trapped here, right? And then compare the social media feeding on attention, AI algorithms, manipulating emotions, the metaverse being a digital prison world for human consciousness, right? In this view of DARPA's, because DARPA, for those who don't understand what DARPA is, it's the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency that creates the digital hive mind for the Arconic forces. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into some Q&A. We're going to get into some Q&A real quick. All right. So put your questions in the chat. Put your questions in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. And salute to everybody in the chat, by the way. All right. You know, it's pretty simplistic when you're talking about Trump being the 45th president and the 47th president. That means that a 9/11 event is going to be taking place on his watch, because everything that's connected to this three-dimensional apparatus, or, you know, the Metatronic overlay, everything operates in numbers. And the number system is connected to the binary code system of the Matrix that's interconnected to the dark side of the moon, which is controlled by a supercomputer. The supercomputer that's on the dark side of the moon is what controls your gematria body. Your gematria body is your spiritual body, and your spiritual body is basically your illusionary self that encapsulates the soul, basically. So that's why I said your gematria self and is basically keeping you away from your Sahu body, which is your oversoul. So everything that's connected to as far as that, they tell you that the simulation is ran by numbers. So that's why, the numbers in itself demonstrates the upcoming calamities in the future. So that's why I said Donald Trump is a 9/11 president. 45, 4 plus 5 is 9. 4 plus 7 is 11, 9/11. Salute to Charles. Salute to you, brother. Thank you. Salute to you, brother. We're going to get into some more questions. Let me see. All right. Is the Golden Dome in operation in the United States? First, it has to take place in Greenland because, as I demonstrated, in the past transmissions, I was talking about how Greenland is the Kether of planet Earth, which is the crown chakra. So if you basically entrap the energy of the crown chakra of planet Earth, that's basically going to put an encryption over humans. Because I keep telling people all the time, human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter. So if they want to keep you stuck here on an energetic grid system by having you a cap consciousness, you're not going to be able to harmonize with the energies that's connected to that geographical landmass in Greenland, because Greenland is connected to the magnetosphere, and the magnetosphere is the mental plane, and the mental plane is connected to your crown chakra. So the Golden Dome is basically another way to keep you stuck in this energetic matrix or energy extraction matrix. Let me see. Let me get into some more. Hold on, let me get some more questions. A lot of people have a misconception of when it comes to about the pole shift. When you're talking about the shift, you're really talking about the shifting of constellations. When you look at the top of the precessional circle of the equinox, the Draconian star constellation was in alignment with the energy of the lunar cycle, which was controlled by the Piscean age of darkness. Now you went from the Alpha Draconis star system, and then it shifted to the star Polaris. The star Polaris is the North Star, which is the true spiritual sun. So the North Star Polaris is actually in alignment with the sun cycle, which is also in alignment with the Aquarian age, which is basically the embodiment of the true light. So when you're talking about the shift, you're talking about the energies of the neutrinos that's coming in from the star Polaris, and they use the sun as a medium, a mechanism to siphon the energy of the three-dimensional matrix. So the sun in itself is really just a portal. It's a portal for ascension, and it's a portal of energy to basically resurrect the chosen ones. And the moon is basically a portal for reincarnation. That is the diametrical difference between the celestial bodies. All right, okay, let me see. So that's when you're talking about the shift. But the pole shift in itself also starts with you. I keep telling people, ain't shit moving until you move, right? So this is why it's imperative to get the black women, the so-called black women, in alignment. Because the black women's physiology, it contains orgone energy. They can manipulate the weather in real time. Orgone energy has the ability to manipulate the ethers. That's why they want to keep the black woman so down, so much. This is why they fund people like Sexy Red, what I'm saying, to basically revert the frequency of the black woman. They want to keep you masculine. They want to keep you stuck inside of hedonistic activities. They want to keep you stuck doing the OnlyFans and things of that nature. Misplaced energy. Because when you do that, they know that when the black woman is in alignment, that's when you're going to recalibrate the ethers. This is why they work so hard to keep so-called black women in a degraded state. This is why they do it. Let me see. Salute to B Miles. Salute to everybody in the chat. And share, you know what I'm saying? And also share this transmission, man. Okay. It says, how do you combat gang stalking and struggling financially? I'm heavily targeted 24/7, dropped out of high school because of it. And I got a presentation slide exposing the, okay. The best thing in my book, you got to get my book. I talk about how to level up. I have a whole chapter in my book. The link is in the chat. I talk about how to level up. But you got to be tapped into the 4 elements of the soul, which is thinking, reasoning, understanding, and willpower. Thinking, reasoning, understanding, and willpower. Because your willpower is going to give you the propensity to get up and do something, to get up and go work out, to get up and go hustle and get some money. So that's why I talk about in my book. You got to have a silent grind for loud success. So that means that you got to be in alignment. So it's one of those things where, you know what I'm saying, like you let gang stalking keep you, down. Because the same motherfuckers that's talking down on you, they're going to be speaking on your name when you level up. I have a whole chapter in there talking about leveling up. So this is especially during this time period. You need to get a hustle, you know what I'm saying, in a dream. Get some goals. You need to get some goals it's going to amplify your finances. So anything that's basically self-affirming. And that's another thing when it comes to spirituality. Don't be so spiritual to the point where you don't want to be like, oh, I ain't finna get no money. It's okay to have a job. It's okay to go work. Because if your dream is not paying, it's time for you to take your ass to go to work. And you know what I'm saying, and cultivate some finances. Right? Because at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying, you gotta do for self. You gotta do for your family members. So, but when it comes to gang stalkers, you know what I'm saying, they ain't nothing but haters. You know what I'm saying? And you got to use your haters as an alchemical resource. You got to use your haters as an alchemical resource, which is basically the blueprint for an interstellar vortex portal for your level up. I love when people be hating on me. I love it. I love when people be talking crazy about me. I love it. Because that's a chip, that's a bargaining chip that I put on my shoulder. And like I said, I use that negative energy and I raise that lead and I go to gold. You know what I'm saying? That is what you're talking about, the hero's journey. The hero's journey is the Christ energy, right? So you got to let people hate on you. You got to let people gang stalk you. You got to let it happen. But you got to use that energy as fuel. I love when people talk shit about me. But that's the thing though. They ain't gonna say shit to your face though. Hiding in secret, speaking behind, fake pages. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, I'm gonna get off at the hour and 30 mark because, like I said, I got my voice is kind of like, still a little cracky a little bit from because I had a cold. So we're gonna get into some more questions. Okay. Is Generation Z the last generation to be captive before the liberation? I wouldn't say that, but it's not just a generation because when you're talking about the 144,000, it's actually talking about a chosen people. Because scientists, they also said that 85% of the people on the planet, they're NPCs. They don't have the ability to think for themselves. So if you can't think for yourself, you cannot be liberated mind, body, and soul, right? Because in order to be liberated, you got to be liberated mentally. Because there's a lot of people, they don't have the ability to think for themselves. So I wouldn't just say, a whole culmination of Generation Z, you know what I'm saying, being, the last reformers of the planet, you know what I'm saying? Because you got a lot of people, you know what I'm saying, who are chosen ones, they in their 50s and their 60s and they tapped in. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't say that. My Cash App, I really don't like sharing my Cash App like that. You know what I'm saying? But my Cash App is Bridell Rice, $ Bridell Rice. I'll put it in the chat. Yeah, I really don't, because we, just like me and Rod Hayes, say we don't do it for the money, but sometimes you can't shut down other people's blessings because that operates on the law of reciprocity. Energy expands and returns to itself. So if I negate your blessing, I'm blocking your blessing. So salute to you, French Wee Wee 444. Let me see. Okay. So what's the first thing we should do during a blackout and separation? You got to watch the movie. I think it's called Quiet. I think it's called Quiet. It's the Quiet Room or something. But, they also talk about it in the Holy Quran. And also Dr. Malachi York, Freedom Master Teacher, he talks about the smorgasbord event. There's going to be a one final sacrifice that's going to be taking place on the planet. And that's when you're going to have the energetic grid goes down. And that's when you're going to have the 72 demons of Goetia. And they're going to come from the caverns of the earth and they're going to come to the surface and feed. But there's nothing to fear if you're tapped into your Christ energy. So what I'm saying is that you got to be operating from the crown chakra on down to the heart chakra. Because one thing about extraterrestrial entities and interdimensional entities, they don't see your physical vessel. They don't see skin color. They see vibration. So if you're operating from the crown chakra, you good. If you're operating from the throat chakra, you good. If you're operating from the heart chakra, you good. But if you're on a low frequency, you're acclimated to the red, the yellow. They feed on that energy. You food to them, right? So that's why I tell people all the time, keep your frequency up. Mind, body, and soul. That is the true Israel. They're not going to touch. It's kind of like the same movie. If you watch the movie Predator, he didn't see skin color. He seen frequency. He seen bioluminescent energy of humans. And anything that was operating on the frequency of red and yellow and orange, he attacked it. Right? And that's you got to watch the older Predator movies. But during the times of the blackout, it's imperative, to get your resources together and stay quiet. Because when that grid goes down and it's nighttime, that's when them cryptids is going to come up. They even talk about that in the Bible. You know what I'm saying? And as I'll talk about in the Bible, that you have many different, Nephilim creatures. You have different, interdimensional, outer dimensional entities, because they also talk about giants in the Bible. You will tell a motherfucker, you will tell a damn Christian, be like, there's giants was real. Be like, no, it wasn't. No, giants ain't real. Like, bruh, if you read the damn book, it tells you in the book of Enoch, they said that the giants were 9 cubits. This is why I said that, when it comes to Christians, they're so one-dimensional. They don't understand nothing. So when you get into the mathematical sequence of biblical context, 9 cubits, 1 cubit of a man is 18 inches. You take 18 times 9, you get 162 inches divided by 12, that's 13.5 feet. So you had giants during the biblical times, according to the Bible, they was about 13 to 14 feet. You know what I'm saying? So when unicorns were real, because that's when the Nephilim, when they came down, they didn't just mate with the daughters of men, they mated with animals. So when you get a Nephilim mate with a horse, you get a unicorn, right? This is why I tell people all the time, it's imperative to understand what's taking place inside the Bible, because a lot of people, they just have their philosophies and everything misconstrued. So during the time of the blackout, stay quiet and separate from anybody who's on a low frequency, because energy transfer is very real. If you're vibrating in a high frequency and you standing next to a low vibrational ass person, shit, you might be food just as much as their food. You know what I'm saying? So you might be food just like them. Let me see. Oh, skip her. So we're not black, right? You got a young one in there, just for clarification, who are dark melanin overall. Of course, we're not black because it's interconnected to the Civil War II's principles. Because when you call yourself black, you're basically calling yourself a Christian, right? When you go to the G3526 Strong Concordance, the word Christian translates to the word black. So if you're calling yourself black, you're calling yourself a Christian. If you're calling yourself Christian, you're calling yourself black. So because that name and that nomenclature title, the fallacy of it, puts you under the jurisdiction of the European Union, that is interconnected to ecclesiastical law, canon laws. Because the canon laws is interconnected to the 1724 Black Christian codes, where the police get their policies from, that put you under the color of law. Black person, black man with a hat. You're under color of law. So this is why it's imperative to not call your motherfucking self black. You know what I'm saying? So this is why it's imperative to understand, titles, tribal titles, that is connected to the Constitution. But salute to you, Nature Child. That was a good question. Okay, let me see. Do you think the Aztecs from Mexico can roam and have land rights in Texas? Did they roam the area and back then and interact often with the Mers? Yeah, because the Olmecs are the ones who gave the edification to the Aztecs and the Mayans on how to build step pyramids. Step pyramids are actually older than slope pyramids. So that's how you know the great majority of the geographical landmass of the world, this is actually the milk and honey. This is the land of milk and honey. Because how you know you had Olmec statues over here way before Christopher Columbus came over here? Because you can't put them damn Olmec statues on a ship. You can't do it. Right? So the Mers, those that is the autochthonous indigenous people. And just like me and Rod, in the last transmission, we demonstrated the diametrical difference between a Moor and a Mer. The Moors are the ones who took those titles. The titles that's interconnected to the Albion European system. And the Mers are the ones that was also interconnected to the autochthonous people that's connected to the 5 civilized tribes. You got to watch the last video that me and Rod did. But the Aztecs and the Incas, they're really, they Smithsonians and stuff, like Western, historians, they tell you they just disappeared. Nah, they right here. They look like you and me. They look like you and me. They didn't disappear. They look like you and me. They didn't go nowhere. So we're still roaming around in real time. It said, okay. Salute to Jackie Degree. The state sent 5 letters on February 28th for medical authorization, telemed meeting by 3/7. You know what's crazy? I had a dream. I kept seeing the number 38 in my dream. I don't know if that's, in alignment for March 8th, if something's going to be taking place on March 8th, but I kept seeing 38. I talked about it in the African Spirituality Podcast last night with Orisha Bemi. I talked about how I kept seeing the number 38. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's, acclimated to something that's going to be taking place on March 8th. But if something happens, you know what I'm saying? Like, shit, I was in alignment to receive that message. But to answer your question, it says this is for disability. Yes, it's all a part of Henry Kissinger's National Memorandum 200, because they consider disabled people useless eaters, right? And also in the Talmud, they also consider us the Goyim. So, it's about, the unaliving program. Most definitely. So protect your loved ones as much as possible. Okay. Yeah, Quiet Place is the movie. Yep. Quiet Place is the movie. Let me see. Okay. Yep, he was a Rothschild. Facts. Man, salute to everybody in the chat. You know what I'm saying? We got everybody in the chat who, has the ability to do their own independent research. I just seen a good question here. Is the Antichrist the demiurge in human form? That's a good question, because your ego self is the demiurge, and your ego self is what keeps you entrapped inside of your gematria body. Your gematria body is anti yourself, right? Anytime you become anti yourself, you become the Antichrist, because the demiurge is acclimated to the ego, and your ego is connected to the emotional components of people, places, and possessions, which controls the Metatronic overlay. So I agree. Yes. That's a great question. Oh yeah, the chosen ones, you know what I'm saying? Like this is why I say you gotta read the book. You gotta get this book by Amir Gaddafi, the Green Book. The fall of democracy is the fall of the Western world, the fall of the demonstrative government. So shit has to collapse. You got to see a lot of calamity. You're going to see a lot of ecological humanitarian crisis. It has to happen. The financial system has to go down, because this book gives you the demonstration and the blueprint for reconstruction, for the resurrection of the matriarch. You got to get this book right here, the Green Book. Let me see. Okay. And salute to everybody in the chat. It's about, about 60% of the people who watch the channel, they're not even subscribed to the channel. So don't be a gang stalking the channel. Just go in and hit that subscribe button, man. Just hit the subscribe button and join the squad. You know what I'm saying? Salute to everybody in the chat. Coptic Corey, salute to you. Is there a connection between the chosen ones and the failing in higher level of business? I missed out on millions in multiple large real estate deals because of the greedy such and such. We know them people. I'm trying to make sense of it. Him it briefly addressed it. Yeah and no at the same time. The thing about, this is the time right now. I talk about, investing your money inside of, gold and silver, because you can use it as a placeholder for the next simulation, I should say, right before the reset happens. So right now, you know what I'm saying? This is the time for the chosen ones to win right now. This is why, Elon Musk, he said, according to put it like this: maritime law is gaining jurisdiction through the Uniform Commercial Code. So it's either you get your money up, or you're going to be trapped inside the digital prison during the time of 2030, where they have those sustainable development goals. Right? So, you know what I'm saying? Like, you might have missed out on millions, but you know what I'm saying? It's one of those things where you got to start investing, maybe invest in some gold and some silver, invest inside of some XRP. I don't really get into the financial aspects of it, because I'm not like a super, financial guru or whatever. So I tried to answer your question, as the best that I could. But salute to you. Thank you. Let me see. We got some more super chats. Let me see. I'm going to get in about 2 more questions and I'm going to head on out. And if you got personal questions, my Instagram is at the bottom. Just follow me on Instagram and then send me a question or whatever, and I'll try my best to answer it. Okay. Yeah, we actually talked about let me see. Yeah, we talked about Simeon Toko last night on the African Spirituality podcast. Simeon Toko, uh, he basically had immortalized cell lines. He was able to regenerate himself. So the same thing takes place when you're talking about a starfish. If you cut a starfish in half, it's going to grow right back. Why? Because of the immortalized cell lines that is basically inside that genetic format. So when you're talking about Simeon Toko, he had the ability to do the same thing. He was able to regenerate because he was activating his X gene, which turned him into an X-Man. Salute to you, brother. Thank you. If you will, leave a review on Amazon. I'm gonna get one more question in, and I'm gonna go get me some food. I ain't ate all day. You know. Salute to everybody holding it down for Ramadan. Salute to everybody doing they fasting and whatnot. Let me see. We get one more question in, and then I'm gonna head on out. I'm gonna get a good one in. Hopefully, you know what I'm saying, the time I come back, my voice will be all the way back. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I'm straining when I'm talking. Okay. All right, we're gonna get one more question. It's not updating. That's why I'm taking so long for me to get a question in. I'm not seeing no updates. Okay, here they come. Your gematria body is actually your physical vessel. Read this book right here. I use it as a reference all the time. The Ancient Flower of Life by, Jovello Melchizedek. But in that book, you know what I'm saying, your gematria body is what keeps you acclimated to the simulation. So when you tap into your Sahu body, which is your Zohar body, which is the oversoul, that's when you become your higher self. So it's basically it's a mechanism to keep you stuck to the physical vessel. That's what your gematria body is. Your gematria body is cultivated by emotions, and your emotions is connected to your ego, which is the demiurge. So that means that you have to overcome the ego to become the Christ. So that was my last question. Salute to everybody in the chat. Things are going to get really critical during the Great Awakening period. And me and Rob, we're going to be back on here pretty soon. I talked to him the other day. And then we also going to be on the African Spirituality podcast with Orisha Bemi. So salute to everybody in the chat, and look forward to a lot more transmissions that I'm going to be doing, because shit is going to start heating up a lot more. It's going to start heating up. So this is why I said there's no reason to be scared during this time period. Get your household in order. You know what I'm saying? Because when you get your household in order, that's when you reverse the polarity of everything that's interconnected to this, the outside paradigm, as far as like people, places, and possessions. So this is why I said, you think for her as she feels for you. Y'all got to become one. That's how you activate the tetrahedron of the Merkaba. Neo wasn't able to beat the Matrix until he was able to tap into with Trinity. Neo wasn't able to lead the Matrix until he made it with Trinity. That's what the Trinity principle is: mind, body, and soul, man, woman, and child. This is why they pushing the 47 so much, right? The 47 problem of Euclid: man, woman, and child, mind, body, and soul. That is also interconnected to the endocrine system: hypothalamus gland, thyroid gland, thymus gland. Because the thymus gland is what unlocks the 144,000 Akina keys to open up the heart chakra, to make you an open vessel for new energy. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching this video. End of transmission.
It's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. Karma's gonna get to you and then you'll have a chariot with only one less friend. Now I had distant folks that are looking to my eyes to understand the wisdom he's given and his wealth from the skies. So thanks for this meal that I'm about to receive, and thank you for my health and all the good memories. Thanks for the courage taking on another day. When I used to not believe, but now I know about grace. Stay away from the fire, cause the flames does burn. Go with your gut feeling. When it's wrong, you learn. For every one step I take, the Lord takes two. And do unto others if you want it done unto you. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. This a completion, the selfish Proto-Grecian, Amerindian, Phoenician. I'm the last of the Mohicans, the bastard of the land, the pen, melanin, accretion. And we just trying to get back to the fact that we was kings and queens of a land before the avalanche seized it. I live on Turtle Island with the rest of the diseased. Better than the medicine for 7 different treatments. You try to ride away but end up getting seasick. The sleep can feel my words like Braille and they're awakened with the penmanship of Hindu script written in them vacant monastery honorary payments to the prototype. Tomorrow's only a day away, but nothing happens overnight. The fuck's wrong with going left when you know it's right? Biting off more than I can chew, that's an overbite. Black on black crime is like watching 2 soldiers fight when all along they was on the same page. History. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land. It's me again, God. I know it's been a long time since I last called you back on your line. So I hope and I pray for your hand to help me on the ladder to the land.